We have a lot of leaders who are saying, I just want to get back to normal. What is that?
Yeah.
We're not going back to what it was. It will never be. Our businesses have been irrevocably changed. So our ability to define that space is what we need to be looking at. What does it need to be successful in the future? We should be finding the gains from this global distributed workforce that we can now tap into because of the virtual capacities and capabilities we haven't had in the past, right? That's what we need to bring forward.
Welcome to Warriors at Work. This is Jeannie Coomber, your guide and host. Warriors at Work is a place where everyone in the workplace can come together, gain insight, encouragement, tell stories, connect, and share wisdom. We are a place of like-minded people at different stages of life, all coming together with a shared interest of enlightening and inspiring one another. If you're interested in going from the predictable to the potent, and you want to find your warrior magic, step into the journey with us. Welcome to Warriors at Work. Hi everyone, it's Jeannie. Thanks so much for being a part of this conversation at the Warriors at Work podcast. So, why am I hosting a conversation about curating talent for the future? And specifically, why am I focused on Generation Z? Well, we have all been affected by the wild ride of 2020, whether it's personal impact in our businesses and our family life, or it's the clients we serve. We all have a story. But there is a story that needs our attention right now in the business community, and that is the impact that COVID is having on a crucial ingredient in securing our future, Generation Z. So a couple of stats. They're born between 1995 and 2010. They represent 61 million job seekers. 48% of them are non-Caucasian. They see their phones, by the way, as a tool and spend an average of 10 hours a day on a device, a lot of times having multiple screens open. They're the most achievement-oriented of all the generations. They're more highly educated. They're more ethically and racially diverse. They're also financially focused. And here is something that I'm mentally underlying. They are highly comfortable in change. They're pragmatic, they're truth seekers, and they are driven to success. And right now, their learning and their career opportunities have been severely interrupted. And we, i.e. me and you in the business community, can help. So just think about your organization right now. Does this sound like the attributes that can help you, your companies grow and evolve? How are you thinking about the future of the workplace? Okay, so to join me in this conversation is a dear friend and colleague, Maryanne Spatola. She's a former chief human resources officer. She has over 20 years of extensive experience in human capital, talent management, executive coaching, strategy. She also has this unique ability to combine academic theory with practical experience. And she teaches a variety of human capital courses at NYU and Rutgers. She's a frequent speaker on various industry circuits. She's also recognized by NJ Biz as one of the best 50 women in business. I get to call her my colleague, my confidant, and my friend. And I want for this conversation to enlighten, inspire, but more than anything, get you into action. We need to come together as a business community. So my role here today is to be a bit of a thought provoker. You all know me as an interviewer, a podcaster, an executive coach, and now doing lots of things in the media space for people in the workplace. But I really feel strongly about us in the business community having to take a very proactive role to get into discussion about this, is what I see as a major business challenge. And my partner here, Maryanne Spatola, I know you feel the same way. And I'm thrilled to have a conversation with you through the lens of talent, being this is your jam, this is what you know, this is how you're advising companies around the country on how to have better practices. So first of all, Maryanne, thank you so much for being here with me and agreeing to talk with me about this idea.
Absolutely.
So here's where I want to start. Let's first put your talent hat on. Where do organizations begin to get their arms around this as they think about talent and the future of their business?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jeannie. And I think certainly on the minds of a lot of business leaders at the moment. What I've noticed in the research area, and I use this research report from Bain in my last course I taught on the future of HR. What they're doing is they're likening other crises we've experienced in the past, like the financial crisis from 2008. And they've actually studied companies who not only survived it, but thrived through it, who are the winners and the losers. And so they're using this COVID experience for the same kind of analogy and to do the compare and contrast. And so what they found in the research was there's three things that organizations are doing that help them thrive. The first is learning how to be adaptable. And so that means they're flexing and stretching even in the face of a crisis and not giving into the retrenching, which is the knee-jerk reaction of cutting budgets. And we're seeing a lot of that, especially in this Gen Z space, right? They're cutting internships and other things. They're also unbelievably resilient. They know how to bounce back. They know how to keep marching even in the face of failure. It didn't work, let's repurpose and try again. And the third bucket of what they're really good at is being able to predict, right? So certainly none of us have crystal balls, but they're really good at peeking around corners, following trends, making predictions about what could happen, lots of scenario planning, and getting ahead of that curve. And when you put those three elements together, it really embodies what successful organizations have done in the past. And even in this crisis now, the ones that are surviving and thriving have those three same attributes. And so that's what we're noticing in organizations. And the way that relates to our Gen Z pop, they're being hit the hardest in terms of missing out on the opportunity to get work experience. Internships are being canceled, hiring is being put on freeze. And that's probably the biggest mistake organizations can make in the moment.
It's what I worry so much about, imagining the growth and evolution of our businesses without this generation, beyond the fact that they are young, coming out of college and business schools, ready and primed to contribute, but their attributes are so what we need right now.
Absolutely.
And, I'm curious just from your perspective. So I've read a lot about this idea of adaptability being a crucial skill, particularly in the HR space. What if that's not an attribute that you have a lot of skill around yourself? How do you acquire that skill set if it's just not something you innately have?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to consider when you're trying to learn how to be more adaptable, agile, flexible. Certainly, the 180 about face we did in March of last year to move us into the virtual world was probably the best teacher. So experience is the number one way to stretch yourself, is try new things on. There may be some skill knowledge gap, right? You need some tactics, some strategies, maybe some inner work you have to do to examine what holds you back from being flexible. What are you fearful of that makes you not willing to do it? But trying new things on for size, take the risk. Try it out. Learn to experiment. That's the other huge attribute of organizations in the future. COVID had accelerated the digital maturity in many organizations simply because it was a necessity. It wasn't a let's not, try it on for size anymore. We had to. There was no choice, or you were going to fold your business, right? Many of my clients had to do a complete 180 on their business models because they were a completely in-person type of product and service. And that just wasn't going to work. So you have to learn how to reinvent yourself. And experience is truly the best teacher to help us just get into that space and learn how to do it.
Yeah, long gone are the days of let's wait and see. Let's just duck down, lock in, create a trench. I use the word retrenching, staying in our silos. None of that's working. I was talking to actually a colleague last night. He's more in the restaurant business. And he's like, anybody that's saying, let's just wait this out, and then we're going to come back when things return. Like he said, that's crazy town.
Yeah,
you have to be right on time with the pivot, being very attuned to what's going on. Which leads me to my next question. What is actually reasonable to expect of organizations right now, given all of the competing priorities? Because what I hear a lot about is they're so focused on the bottom line right now. How do we hit numbers? How are we even growing and expanding our business with the current capacity? They're not necessarily thinking that far out beyond that, particularly from a talent perspective. So what's reasonable here?
Yeah, first and foremost is don't give up on your talent pipelines. And that's ultimately what we're really talking about here is, as an organization, you have to have a strong talent pipeline for all parts of your organization, from Gen Z up through boomers, and having a nice mix in lots of different ways, right? A nice diverse workforce that will help you get your results. But mainly what we're seeing is organizations need to stay focused on, even if it's in small doses, still having some form of an internship, still having some way to engage the Gen Z population. A lot of companies are focused now more than ever on corporate social responsibility, right? Being strong, healthy, conscious, purposeful companies. Well, there's nothing more attractive about that than to a Gen Z population, right? So find those partnerships. There's a lot of Gen Zs looking for pro bono opportunities even to get involved. And another trend we're noticing is that the Gen Zs have taken a big jump in a gap year experience because of the current educational situation, right? Not all of them want to do online learning or are suitable for doing online learning. And so as opposed to putting themselves in that spot, they're taking a year off and they're traveling and working and experiencing new places. Those are the types of things you want in your organization. They're risk takers. They're willing to try new things to get a different experience, to gather new knowledge and bring that into your organization. Some companies are using them for innovation, right? So bringing in, and this is another counterintuitive for a lot of organizations, is bringing in a group that knows nothing about what you do, because they have a fresh lens, a fresh perspective, they have no filters, and they're going to ask really great questions. And so being open to inquiry and examining what they can bring in terms of new products, new services. They might be your next consumer. And what they share with you about their experience and their interests, right? There's lots of ways to leverage the Gen Z population that make you be a little more creative about how you approach it than the standard, let me hire somebody, right? That's where we tend to get stuck.
Yeah, I'd love to unpack a little bit of that, because I'm thinking to anybody that's listening to this, particularly if they're in the talent space or they're a business leader that's looking to do things a little differently. Let's get into some specific steps, some more of the tactics. Where would they begin?
Yeah, so what we used to do in organizations when I was in that talent management seat, we would leverage our executives to reach into their college affiliations, right? Trying to identify ways you can engage with these Gen Zs and see where they are. Are they on gap years? Can you engage them in an opportunity to do something while they're on a gap year? Other ways are to follow their social media paths, right? Where do they show up? So here's a great example. I interviewed, when all this craziness started last March, we had a series running called Virtual Virgins for leaders who ended up in the virtual world and never had been there before and didn't know how to handle it or what to do. And we interviewed a military officer who was in charge of recruiting for the Navy. And so same situation, how do we get in front of them? Where do we find them? And they turned to gaming studios. Right. So if I'm not going to school and I'm stuck in a COVID world, how better to reach that population by going to where they live and exist and love and thrive? And so they reached into the gaming community, started building relationships, actually started joining gaming teams, which is quite funny to listen to him describe it. But same idea, right? They're building those relationships, building the foundations, learning what really interests them, what do they want to do, proposing the military as a path for them, and their recruitment numbers skyrocketed.
Wow.
Right.
What a clever idea. That makes
Brilliant.
so much sense.
Brilliant.
So what could happen if businesses did nothing?
Man, would we be in trouble? So the gap is going to be, our organizations will continue to evolve, and they have to continue to evolve to survive. If we don't evolve in our workforce and our practices, how we attract, reward, and retain talent, they're going to miss out. So remember those studies I mentioned in the research? They're going to end up in that loser pile because they're missing the opportunity to push forward, to be resilient, to take the risk and learn to experiment, to be persistent about making positive change for your organization and stay with the game. We're not going backwards. Here's the other thing that I think is really troubling is, and you mentioned this before, we have a lot of leaders who are saying, I just want to get back to normal. What is that?
Yeah.
We're not going back to what it was. It will never be. Our businesses have been irrevocably changed. So our ability to define that space is what we need to be looking at. What does it need to be successful in the future? We should be finding the gains from this global distributed workforce that we can now tap into because of the virtual capacities and capabilities we haven't had in the past, right? That's what we need to bring forward.
I love what you just said. If I had like a highlighter, I would have just been like, but can you say it one more time?
Maybe.
The global, but you said
yeah.
basically we have an opportunity here to really tap into the global workforce, like
the global distributed workforce that we've never had access to before, or didn't have as much access or as easy access to as we've had in the past. That's the beauty of this digital maturity. It just opened those doors. The curtain opened wide into a world that organizations either haven't had experience with or haven't seen the value in being able to tap it. One of my clients was a very staunch position. He's a CEO of a small privately held company. Staunch position about remote work doesn't work. They're not really working. All the myths we have busted, right? Remote workers are slackers, all this other nonsense. He has done a complete 180. They had no choice, had to go digital, like everybody else, virtual, and they have knocked it out of the park in 2020. They had their best year in the last 5 years in 2020. And so all of a sudden, he's like a whole new CEO. He's like, oh my God, this stuff works. Now his mantra is, well, why would I go back? How can we repurpose and redesign our organizations to do more of this because we're knocking it out of the park?
Wow. That is brilliant. What an example of what's possible if you adopt this mindset. So this is the first of many, many, many conversations to come. So if you are in HR, if you're in talent, if you're a business leader running organizations, and this sounds like something you want to know more about, you now have a place that you can come to gain some insight and get into more conversation. So we need each other to help us address what we think is a glaring business issue that we've got to get in front of. And we know how to do this. We have so much horsepower as we come together and share this wisdom back and forth. So stay tuned. Lots more to come. Thank you so much, Maryanne, for being in this conversation with me.
Thanks to everybody for listening to another episode of Warriors at Work and letting us be a part of your warrior journey. You can ask questions and make suggestions for future topics at jc@jeanniecoomber.com. Connect with me personally on LinkedIn and Instagram, and join us on the Warrior Conversations channel on YouTube and at the Warrior Magic Community page on Facebook. You can find links to all these places on my website, jeanniecoomber.com. And most importantly, be sure to tell friends about us, subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, Spreaker, and Spotify. It helps others find the show and puts more warrior magic out into the world.